2017. Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Rachel Fetty. Ryan Wallace.
Here.
Jenny Celine.
Here.
Ron Delaney.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Brusitis.
Here.
Barry Wendell.
Here.
And Mayor Kawecki.
Here. Thank you very much. We'll have the invocation and pledge to the flag. Barry?
Invocation first. December is the darkest month of the year. Many religions have holidays this month, most notably Christmas and Hanukkah, but also Kwanzaa for African Americans, Bodhi Day for Buddhists, and for Hindus in America, Pancha Ganapati. Mostly, we have the winter solstice for those who don't subscribe to a particular religion. Often these holidays involve bringing light to the darkness. Christians light their houses and trees, and for Hanukkah we Jews light candles each of the 8 nights of the holiday. Hanukkah means dedication. At this time of darkness, may we as a city, as a council, dedicate ourselves to finding light, justice, and peace.
Thank you. Pledge to the flag.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. No minutes to approve at the moment. We have correspondence. Do I have any correspondence? Councilor Rachel.
I do. I had a letter from Ms. Marcelle Widmer regarding some concerns that she had about some damage that's been done to the second ward by a telecommunications group. Yes, and I believe that you were also included,
Yes.
but I wanted to make sure that we address that issue at some point. And her address is 35 Wilson Avenue.
Deputy Mayor.
So this is from Allison Bass, Assistant Professor of Journalism at WVU, Reed College of Media. Here's a more recent piece the students in my multimedia new publication class just published about why West Virginia has such a high rate of car fatalities. Drunk driving is one of the reasons, according to Mon County Sheriff Perry Palmer. See article below. I hope the City Council seriously considers the issue of closing downtown private clubs an hour or so earlier and doesn't just table the matter to a commission who hasn't even been staffed yet. Thanks for your interest. The article is at mountaineernewsservice.com/wvu-fatal-car.crashes. We have, I don't think table is the right word here. We have commissioned the commission to look very seriously at this issue. This strikes all of us as something worthy of deep investigation and thoughtful consideration. But I appreciate Professor Bass's correspondence. A constituent wrote with a concern about ice on Lloyd Avenue, and our city manager wrote back with a detailed response, so thank you very much for following up with that constituent. And perhaps this should be filed under ghost correspondence, i.e. rumors. If, as I've heard, a group of representatives in Charleston is considering placing limitations on home rule, I urge them to reconsider. In fact, I urge the opposite course, to give cities greater liberty to do what is right and good for their communities. Home rule allows us as a city council to act locally in the best interests of Morgantown residents. We consider our home rule request with great forethought and always with the greater good of our community in mind. If these rumors are true, I hope they're not. I smell in them the whiff of jealousy. Morgantown is moving toward a greater version of what we are. We are moving toward that renaissance, that marvel on the Mon that we can be. But if politicians who don't share that vision and who don't know our community and are perhaps worried that they or their communities will look less sterling in contrast to Morgantown are working against us, we need to tell them right now, please stop. So I urge Morgantown residents to let their views on the subject of home rule, which I think has offered us great benefits, be known clearly and loudly. Finally, a brief consideration. Dear Governor Justice, all Morgantown wants, or at least a portion of what it wants for Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and every holiday you named here, is for heavy trucks to be rerouted around our downtown so we can have the livable, dynamic, healthy, and prosperous city center we deserve. Have a wonderful holiday and best wishes for 2018. Sincerely, your friend Mark. I'm not giving up on this issue, people, so I'm going to write to Governor Justice frequently. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Any, Councilor
I had
Wallace.
two communications, both of which related to the committee of the whole topic of the downtown bars, perhaps closing early, but more importantly, just the public health and safety elements of that topic. One communication was with a bar owner and a group of his colleagues, and it was very constructive, very productive, actually full of good ideas and back and forth about some other ways that we may tackle some of our concerns about health and safety without affecting bar operating hours. The other communication I received on that topic was from Dan Shook at WVU. He's with the Safe Communities, and he was providing me with extensive data on alcohol-related incidents, property damage, public health factors, and things that we should consider. And by we, I mean the Health and Wellness Commission that will be looking into this probably in the new year.
Any other communications? No?
One interesting, I think it was sort of part of the same conversation that was just referenced with 3 of the bar owners who attended the last meeting, was the idea of at different times of the year for different purposes, giving pedestrians more space on High Street, so that I think that would improve safety, and it would improve sort of the dynamic nature of the downtown, of having, for instance, around game times and other times when it was appropriate, closing off sections of the streets, having food trucks and sort of more festive kind of activities, and then allowing it to be more of a pedestrian area. But I thought that was neat, that something that has been brought up in numerous other forums was also brought up with a contingent from the bar owners. So maybe that's something that at some point we will do a little bit more of. Thank you.
Correspondence? No other? None? All right, we'll move on. We're down to unfinished business, boards and commissions. We have some appointments to be made. We have an appointment to the BZA. Do I hear any nominations?
I would like to nominate Chris Benison to the BZA.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? No discussion? By consensus?
Yes.
Very good. All right. Next, we have 2 positions on the planning. Do I have any nominations?
Yes, I'd like to propose that we appoint Sam Loretta for the first board position on the planning commission.
Very good.
Second.
I'd like to second.
Any discussion at all? Again, by consensus? Very good. Next,
I propose that we appoint or reappoint Tim Stranko to the Planning Commission.
Second?
very good. No discussion? Yes?
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. And lastly, we have a position on the MUB board. Do I have any nominations?
Yes, I'd like to nominate J.T. Straffus.
I'll
I
second.
propose that we reappoint him to the position on the MUB board.
Very good. Any discussion?
Just that we keep Karen Kuntz on file for other MUB openings as they might happen.
Excellent. I agree. It's an excellent candidate. I'm very happy that she made the run for it.
And council also needs to make the appointment for the Wellness Commission, our council appointment.
Yes.
But I think we should did we do J.T. Straffus?
No, let's do it
Yeah.
by consensus.
By consensus.
Very good. All right, nomination for the council representative to our new Health and Wellness Commission. Do I have any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Ryan Wallace, Councilor
Second.
Wallace.
Are you willing to accept the nomination?
With pleasure.
Very good.
Yes, thank you.
And we have a second?
Second.
Do we have consensus?
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. We'll move on. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How many other people are on that board with you?
0 at the moment.
Good luck with that.
But I was on the radio this morning requesting that people sign up. So we have interested individuals already.
Oh, there are a lot of people.
Very good. You'll have to give us a procedure as to how you want them to sign up, respond.
Yes, so as I outlined on WAGR, there are 3 major ways. One is via the website. There is a health and wellness page on the website that has a link to applying for boards and commissions. The other option offered by our city clerk was that any individual can contact the city clerk directly. And finally, I offered my morgantownwv.gov email for those who would prefer to email.
Very good. Thank you. It's almost to the point where we're on special committee reports, so you could have done it there too. Any special committee reports?
Public portion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did skip over the public portion. You're absolutely correct. Thank you. Public portion, which shall be subject to rules established by council and adopted by resolution. If you'd like to speak before council, please come to the podium, give us your name and address, and if you will, limit your remarks to 4 minutes or thereabouts. Do I have anybody who would like to speak to council at the moment during the public portion? None at all? Now, seeing none, we'll move on. Close the public portion. We'll move to new business.
Special committee reports.
Special committee reports. Wasn't I there before?
Yeah, you were. We can't skip over it now.
All right,
We'll get
special
Deja
committee.
vu all over again.
I'm afraid so. Special committee reports. Any special committee reports? Jenny.
Hi. Bow Park, got the chair to smile. Bow Park is looking at the process of beginning to work on the ice rink, and so they're choosing between 4 firms, or interviewing 4 firms to look at beginning the process. So they're engineering types of firms. I just think that that's exciting to be at the point where we're actually going to make use of the funds that were produced by the levy to make improvements at the ice rink.
Very good. Thank you. Any other special committee reports?
Just to briefly reiterate what I mentioned earlier, the Health and Wellness Commission has been officially commissioned, established, and it now has 1 member, and we are collecting the other 6.
Who is that one member?
Not myself.
Oh, okay, just checking.
Thank you. We're collecting 6 more with areas of expertise, 1 Bow Park appointee as well. So.
Have we established, or is that to be done, establishing a meeting date and location?
Not at this time.
Okay.
No meeting has been scheduled yet.
Get
Very good.
people first.
Yeah.
It's a good order.
Just want to share that the Woodburn School Reuse Commission will soon have a couple of openings on the commission. I just want to encourage folks who may be community oriented, that may have an interest in the green space that we have there, or the building facility that we have there, to consider applying for those positions. You don't have to live in Woodburn or the 5th Ward. We do have membership from across the city, and we welcome and encourage that. So if you're out there and you're interested, please consider.
I don't know that this is a good place to put in this plug, but our clerk has advised us that we will need some more applicants for the Bureau of Board of Zoning Appeals. And so if you have any interest in that area, any special interest or curiosity, we would encourage you to apply. We love talking to people who are excited about the city, and if you are watching this, you are one of those people.
That's true. Very good. Any other reports? No? Seeing none, now we'll move on. New business.
Consideration of approval of first reading of an ordinance amending section 14902 of the Administrative Code providing membership requirements for the Board of Parks and Recreation Commissioners.
Do we want to get a brief explanation before we
Sure.
have a motion?
So these next 6 ordinances, this is implementing what was approved by the Home Rule Board. This occurred back on October 19th. So this first one, just very briefly, it removes the property owner requirement, or sometimes referred to as a freeholder, as a prerequisite in order to be appointed to BOPARC. So it just simply defines a resident, so it could be a renter. In essence, could be appointed to the BOPARC board. So.
Very good. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll.
Rachel Fetty,
Yes.
Brian Wallace,
Yes.
Jenny Sleen.
Yes.
Ron Delaney.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Presidio.
Yes.
Barry Wendell.
Yes.
And Mayor Kowacki.
Yes, and that passes 7-0.
Consideration and approval of first reading of an ordinance establishing a new section 12918 of the Administrative Code providing for expenditure of funds on public school properties.
For the benefit of the audience.
Sure. So, as the title implies, we have the ability of expending public funds. The other part that's important, that would be subject to an agreement with the school board. So, we have had instances where they have foregone construction, the notion if it's in the city that they would have to pay business and occupation tax or B&O tax. And so this would allow us the ability of allocating those funds back if we so choose under a written agreement. So.
And then would this give us the opportunity?
I'm sorry, let me
Can I
get,
not ask
yeah,
you a
let me get a
question?
motion, and then,
Okay, sure.
then we'll,
I'll
Move to
motion to
approve.
approve, yeah.
Second?
motion and second, very good. Now, discussion?
Yeah, so that this would give us the opportunity to have a closer relationship, obviously, and perhaps, as I talked about in a previous meeting about with the city attorney, perhaps encouraging such things as solar panels on certain facilities. Does it fall under this category, or is that a separate consideration? That is, how much cooperative possibilities exist here for what gets done, or is this just us meeting certain requests?
My view on this, and I'll defer to the city attorney, is just simply in context to allow us the ability of allocating funds back. So of expending, or I shouldn't say back, but just allocating public funds, period, to the school district. So it's not an ordinance that promotes a cooperative relationship in that context. I mean, there's certainly with any of our partners, stakeholders, certainly can have a conversation on a wide variety of topics. Whether or not we could restrict the use of funds to, a very specific purpose, I don't think that enables us to do that, but, we can certainly engage in the conversation, and if they're agreeable to it, that's another issue. So this is just a very, very basic premise. So.
Thanks.
Councilor Sleen.
So examples of how this comes about, whenever a school is within the city limits and they do a construction project, then the funds that he's talking about are the B&O construction funds. So Prairie Avenue, by the high school, the sidewalk there was it's in the public right of way, and those funds from a construction project were used to create that sidewalk. So that sidewalk was city funded that goes along Prairie. And I don't know whether, I assume all of it
Right,
was.
so they paid B&O construction taxes.
To us,
Right.
and then we put the
waive
money
them,
back into.
Or we give them back to the
we,
schools.
we,
But without,
we used them to pave in the public right of way, an amenity that was useful to the school. So then we had trouble with the Eastwood School on the Mile Ground with figuring out a project that was in the public right of way, because there isn't that much city right of way up there to reallocate the funds back to. Like, so if we wanted a sidewalk in that area, it would, that we would be something that was desirable to the city and useful to the school. If we wanted to allocate those funds back, it wouldn't work because it would need to be on it's either state property or it would be on school property. So there, if we wanted a sidewalk, it's a more difficult proposition. So this would make it so that if we had a project like that, we could allocate those funds. In the matter of solar panels, I'm not sure how that would work. It could be we could all apply for some sort of large grant and work together and put solar panels numerous places, and some of the city funds might end up there. I'm not sure how that would work exactly, but I was thinking at one school that it might be possible that we do a planting project, and it could be that some city funds might be allocated to some trees or bushes that might go somewhere, or maybe we ask the PTA to split the funds, or it just would, as you say, open more doors possibility for partnerships. But we should ask our attorney more what the thought was.
Was this restricted in the past, that this is required now?
The restriction in state code is just one of the general powers of cities is to expend monies on some public improvements, things like recreation and parks, and there's a limitation on expending money on free public schools. That's the Board of Education's area. So with this home rule authority, we are now authorized to expend city money on public schools when we agree with the Board of Education on that. And that, obviously, it's going to be their property, so we don't have any right to go and just start building things on it, right? Or to build our own schools. But we do have the opportunity to work with them to build things that are of benefit to the community, whether that is a walking path or helping with the playground, or maybe making some improvements to the buildings that are there that we think provide a benefit to the community. I would think that would include improvements like solar panels if there's an appropriate agreement in place.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
I just wanted to just share an observation. That is that green space is something that we continue to talk about, and school grounds traditionally provide large green spaces within cities, and we have a few schools in the city. 2 are in my ward, and I think back to the Eastwood reference. The school board has bought additional property adjacent to the school. They're developing through a series of volunteer efforts and Boy Scout projects. They're developing trails through that adjacent property, and just sort of thinking about how, as a city, could we begin to collaborate with the county in terms of connecting these green spaces. And when I think about Eastwood, there is no sidewalk even on school grounds leading from the driveway up to the school. And so it seems to me like we could work towards achievement of our strategic plan goals of green spaces, and this might provide some opportunity or some incentive for more collaboration between the school board and the city.
And we were trying, and it didn't work. When we had funds, we were trying, and it wasn't working
Oh, it was?
because it was on
Okay.
their property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any additional discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Rachel Fetty,
Yes.
Ryan Wallace,
Yes.
Jenny Celine,
Yes.
Ron Delaney,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Brusitis,
Yes.
Barry Waddell.
Yes.
And Mayor Kowicki.
Yes, and that passes 7-0.
Consideration of approval of first reading of an ordinance establishing new section 120, my eyes, 129.17 of the Administrative Code governing disposition of real estate.
Again,
Okay.
thank you.
What this enables us to do is, if we so choose to forego an auction, we can enter into a lease less than market value. We can also lease a property to a nonprofit organization, and it's mainly premised around for economic development purposes. So it's not unusual for a local government to assist on what's called land assembly. So if we had an ability to purchase a property, then repurpose it for private investment, then it would enable us in order to do that. Absent this provision, we had to go to auction, and the property could go to an unintended property user. So this way, if there is an intended use that we're trying to promote for economic development purposes, we can further that through this new ordinance.
Do you have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Approved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yes, I would like to just ask the city manager or perhaps the attorney if this hypothetical scenario would be applicable under this new ordinance. Would the city of Morgantown be able to assist a YMCA by providing city land at a less than market value lease?
Short answer is yes.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Actually, I think this is a very good thing.
Yes, very good thing.
It gives us a whole lot of latitude that we didn't have in the past, and that we will be able to use very wisely, I'm sure. Call for the question.
Rachel Fetty,
Yes.
Ryan Wallace,
Yes.
Jenny Celine,
Yes.
Ron Delaney,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Brusitis,
Yes.
Barry Wendell,
Yes.
and Mayor Kowecki.
Yes, and that passes 7-0.
Consideration of approval of the first reading of an ordinance creating a new section 137309 of the Planning and Zoning Code governing expansion of non-conforming agricultural, industrial, and manufacturing uses.
Again, you're on.
Okay. In this instance, what was occurring is that a non-conforming use could end up expanding in an entirely different area. But if you had an owner who owned multiple properties but in different areas of the city, that non-conforming use could end up expanding. And so under this arrangement, it would prohibit that from occurring. So that is counter to protecting particularly residential areas that could be impacted absent having such an ordinance. So.
Do you have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion? I'm sorry.
Would it mean that if the entity that's making the decision, this is a planning commission, I'm trying to remember, if the entity that's making the decision, is it possible that it means that it's not automatic? It could happen. There could be, or they would have to go through a new application process, or how does it just automatically, trying to remember how that.
This decision is effectively made by the existing city code, where non-conforming uses are already provided for. In that, essentially, they cannot expand beyond the footprint they already have. There are some minor exceptions to that. This ordinance and really effectively this home rule authority
Yes.
already simply applies those same laws to manufacturing, industrial, and agricultural uses.
Similar to all the other,
That's correct. Those uses will now just be treated the same as all other uses.
yeah, okay. Thank you. I'm
And
good.
it is non-conforming.
Right.
So,
Really, this seems like quite a loophole closing
Right.
ordinance. It's just a common sense thing to do.
very good. Additional discussion? Call for the question.
Rachel Fetty,
Yes.
Ryan Wallace,
Yes.
Jenny Celine,
Yes.
Ron Delaney,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Brusitis,
Yes.
Barry Wendell,
Yes.
and Mayor Kowecki.
Yes, and that passes 7-0.
Consideration of approval of first reading of an ordinance creating a new section 137506 of the Planning and Zoning Code governing notice procedures for zoning amendments altering dwelling unit density.
Okay.
So the current provision in the zoning ordinance, when we are through the planning commission, if they were contemplating any sort of density change, then the requirement is every property owner within that affected zone must receive, I believe it's a certified mail. And so if we're looking at R1A or any of the residential districts, it's quite costly what we calculated out. So again, this pertains to changing density. So if there's any other zoning change, in that instance, there's not that requirement. But pertaining in this very narrow instance, that absent this, we would have to notify every single property owner through certified mail. And with this new procedure, we publish a notice in the newspaper. There are many individuals that sign up through contacting the Development Services Department. They can receive an email sort of notification of any change, and so we routinely provide that, just kind of recognizing that there's new methods of communication in order to keep property owners informed. So,
Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Is there any additional discussion?
I'd just
Councilor Wallace.
like to say this is another common sense measure. I just want to make sure that even though we have decreased our obligation to provide certified mail, that city staff will in fact still go to reasonable, due diligence to provide, like as you mentioned, email or some sort of announcement in addition to the legal advertisement, or will it only be a legal advertisement?
well, anyone that subscribes already is receiving the email notifications. So I think what we're recognizing is not only the newspaper advertisement is the bare minimum requirement.
Right.
However, we communicate frequently through social media, and so so that there's other means of communication that's done. So making every opportunity available to communicate to the public, we'll certainly pursue that. So I don't think it's a case of. I think it's being much more realistic of how most people receive their information, and whereas to get a certified letter it probably causes more confusion than it helps to clarify things, and in the instance of where that issue is important to someone, they're already signed up through our email notification system of where they want to receive notice of any sort of change that occurs in zoning ordinances, and we're providing that information currently.
And this just affects notice. It doesn't affect any of the other procedural, like public hearings or anything like that.
No,
Okay.
it does not. We're
Perfect.
still required to have a public hearing.
Yeah.
So anyone can, if there was a change to the density, anyone could participate in the public hearing and give comment and testimony to council.
We'll go. Councilor
Oh,
Petty?
sorry. No, go ahead. She was said. Okay.
You're fine.
All right. Well, I just had a couple of questions, and the first is whether there is in other ordinances or state laws affecting this ordinance and this ordinance change, whether there's a requirement to post near the property or on the property that a zoning amendment is being considered. And also whether there's any intent on the part of the city to conduct a regular mailing without the certified mail requirement.
So we're talking about two different things. In that instance, you're talking about a request for someone to make a zoning change. And so in that notification, there still is that requirement within a certain proximity that we have to notify people and conduct the sign. That's entirely different. In this instance, we're talking about a verbiage change to how we define density that applies to all properties that within that zoning classification. Does that
Okay,
make
so
sense?
this is a narrower,
Yes.
type of announcement
So
solely
when you're talking
about.
about changing a definition that impacts
Yeah.
all properties within that, R1A or R1 district, what's currently provided in the zoning ordinance that we have to notify all property owners because it's everyone that's impacted. Whereas a zoning change is very property specific, and the notification of the adjoining property owners, that's not going away. That's unchanged.
And so they will be adjoining landowners will be notified in the same way that they always have.
Correct. That part of the process is not changing.
Okay. And regarding this narrow change, will there be a mailing component to the notification requirement that does not include the certified mail process, or is it going to be solely social media, signing up by subscription for notification, and the newspaper advertisement?
The latter.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Councilor Celine.
That was the type of clarification that I was interested in also,
Yeah.
because I'm familiar with specific changes and posting, and I was going to ask the identical question about posting. So this is just for blanket code change, essentially, if we're going to change a definition.
Right, that impacts any property that's within that zoning classification.
Right.
So, and it.
Yeah, and
from
that'd
my
be
understanding-
ridiculous to have a notice requirement for that.
Right, I don't recall the amount, but it's
Mhm.
rather onerous from, I can tell you that much. And-
Yep,
and
we don't
again,
need
it's just-
certified mail for that. Yeah,
No,
I
no.
get it.
And it
Okay.
pertains to density.
Thank
so,
you.
Yep.
Additional discussion? Seeing none, call for the question.
Rachel Fetty,
Yes.
Ryan Wallace,
Yes.
Jenny Celine,
Yes,
Ron Delaney.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Brusitis.
Yes.
Barry Wendell.
Yes.
And Mayor Kowecki.
Yes, and that passes 7-0.
Consideration of approval of first reading of an ordinance amending section 151102 of the Fire Prevention Code to authorize arrests for arson and explosives offenses.
Okay.
So this home rule change pertains to making felony arrests. And so currently, the fire marshal does not have that ability. If such an instance that there was an arson, what would end up happening is that a police officer would have to issue the arrest. The fire marshal staff would do all the work. They would prep the police officer, and so you're talking about a duplication, whereas in this very specific enforcement provision that the fire marshal can conduct arrests, can provide testimony at the court proceeding, and it's much more expeditious and quite frankly, better use of staff time.
Good, do you have a motion?
Move to approve.
Move to approve? Second. Moved and seconded. Is there a discussion? Good.
I
Councilor
would
Booth.
just like to note that I was not a part of the council that passed the original home rule amendments that allowed the arrest of folks who were committing crimes that were misdemeanors, or for some of the other provisions that have affected our fire rating, I guess, would be the best way to put it. But everyone who was a part of that should be very, very proud. The preceding ordinances have had such a dramatic effect on the public safety of the entire city. We have seen a reduction of purposefully set fires from over 200, I believe in 2012, to 12. No, I think it might actually be 9 as of this month for the 2017 year. And that is such a dramatic improvement. For once, it's really nice to see us fall to the bottom of the ratings for the city of our size. And I'm just proud to be a part of this opportunity to extend that because I think it protects us all. It protects and it protects our firefighters, and I really appreciate it.
Any additional comments or discussion? Seeing none, call for the question.
Rachel Fetty.
Yes.
Ryan Wallace,
Yes.
Jenny Celine.
yes,
Ron Delaney.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Brusitis.
Yes.
Barry Wendell.
Yes.
And Mayor Kowecki.
Yes, and that passes 7-0.
Consideration of approval of a supplemental resolution redesignating Combined Utility System Revenue Bond Series 2017B and 2017A.
Go ahead.
In this instance, if I could ask that you could suspend the rules, and Tim Ball, the general manager from Morgantown Utility Board, as well as John Stump, their legal counsel, is here to present.
Excellent.
So.
Please suspend the rules. Thank you.
yes.
By all means. Welcome.
Thank you. The supplemental parameters resolution documents this council's approval of certain details that were unknown when the prior bond ordinances were approved by this council several weeks ago. It also authorized, the supplemental parameters resolution also authorizes the mayor to execute the documents related to that pending bond issue and to approve any final details that may not be known until the actual time of closing. A very brief summary: this proposed financing that we are doing will refinance $1.9 million of existing debt from a 2012 stormwater issue, and will also issue a new debt of $1.5 million for a total of 3.4 in the big picture, for various reasons related to bank qualification requirements on bond issues and some pending federal tax law changes. We will issue only $2.7 million of this $3.4 million in calendar year 2017, and the remaining $700,000 is anticipated to be issued in 2018, and it will require that $700,000 in 2018 will require its own separate supplemental parameters resolution at that time.
Do I have any discussion, questions for the? No?
This is pending what's happening at the national level, obviously, and there's greater certainty now, is what you're saying, about where we're moving in terms of taxes and so forth.
Really, that's true. What we're trying to do is to protect ourselves against the possibility that the tax-exempt status of a large portion of this issue might be lost under the pending federal legislation. We don't know today that that would be the case, but we're ready to move forward with this issue. We would rather play it safe than sorry, and by doing so, by moving forward now, we eliminate the question of whether that status, that tax-exempt status, might be lost or not.
Because as we discussed previously at the Committee of the Whole, it's unlikely that we'll have a more favorable status if we wait around.
Correct.
Yep.
The trend in interest rates is that they're rising, and so we enjoy the benefit through a lower interest rate by acting quickly as well. Yes.
Additional comments, questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council.
Sorry to be last on the agenda. Well, not quite. Call for the question.
We need to get a roll call or a motion.
Oh,
Motion to approve.
Oh, sorry, you're right. Motion, and who seconded? Ron.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
just wanted to say before we have our vote that just really appreciate the forethought of MUB, the diligence in tracking these issues nationally, as you're saying, and the opportunity and willingness to be ready. So it's good all the way around.
So we have a motion. Is there any additional discussion? None? Seeing none, then call for the roll.
Rachel Fetty.
Yes.
Ryan Wallace.
Yes.
Jenny Celine.
Yes?
Ron Delaney.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Brusitis.
Yes.
Barry Wendell.
Yes.
Mayor Kawecki.
Yes, and that passes 7-0.
Next is the strategic plan implementation, and that's the city manager.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So quite simply, the strategic plan articulates a new vision and goals for Morgantown and the specific steps to achieve that vision. So what you have before you is 9 strategic goals that we've identified and 18 separate objectives to carry that out. And so if there's no further edits or consideration of anything else, presenting this to your final approval, and we will distribute this and make this available to the public, and look forward to carrying this forward and bringing about successful initiatives.
Do you have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Motion and seconded. Any additional discussion?
Well,
or
I know
comments?
that much was made of in the newspaper about the exploration of a municipal sales tax, and there was some discussion on social media as if this were a fait accompli, that it had already happened, even though the word exploration means what, people? It means to investigate, to explore, to get out there and take a look at it, right? And that's what we're doing in large measure for many issues that come our way, is we're exploring what is best for our community. And I think that needs to be emphasized before people take a little portion of what might have been said or written and run with it. And this is a great document. It's a wonderful commitment to our community to work our very best at achieving some of these goals that we've outlined. And it's going to take a commitment on our part, but I think it is also going to take a commitment from our community. If you want this, be behind us on this. And I think we were pretty diligent about bringing to this document what the community has told us they want. And this is an opportunity for us to collaborate with people out there in the community to make this happen. But it's not going to happen if we get tied up in, oh, this is my little portion and I want to hold on to it as vigorously and as carefully as possible. I think we do need to take the word community, speaking of words, seriously. We're a part of this together. And we're not going to move forward unless we acknowledge that we are in it together. And we do have a stake not only in what's happening now, but in what will happen to our community 30 years from now. We had an excellent statement from Mr. Stranko about the need to really plan ahead. And this is in keeping with that notion. He was talking specifically about green space, to really think about the next generation and the generation beyond that, which I think has been given little attention nationally recently, but we don't have to follow that trend. We can give that next generation and the following generation the real care it deserves. So, thank you.
Any other comment? Councilor Wendell.
Just building on what Mark said, Councilor Rosaitis, there were, I was a little upset about some of the things that came out on social media on some of the message boards, which I don't usually answer them or say anything. It sounded like people had thought that we'd already introduced an ordinance to pass a sales tax, which was clearly not true. It wasn't close. So I just said, that's a possibility, but we haven't. There's no ordinance proposed at this point to raise the sales tax. Just stop that. And I'm in favor of approving this as it is.
Oh, very good. Councilor Slee.
I'm also in favor of it as is, and I think it's interesting that when you look at something that has 9 categories and then 3 or sometimes more, usually 3 objectives under each of the 9, sometimes 1 or 2 objectives under the 9, and includes things like revitalizing the riverfront, identifying new and add to existing opportunities for active living, being creative about arts and culture, leveraging and expanding intergovernmental relationships, establishing good governance methods, nurturing community health, promoting collaborative code enforcement, maintaining and increasing efforts for energy efficiency through retrofitting municipal buildings, seeking opportunities for funding for recreation, arts, and culture, instituting tax and fee collection best practices, which the sales tax is at the bottom of a category that includes developing methods to ensure fees and charges are calculated and collected correctly, making sure that we conduct and evaluate fees and charges for appropriateness, preparing long-term financial revenue and expenditure projections. That out of a document that is so wonderful and broad and expansive that we find one little item out of 9 on one page of a multi-page document, also including multimodal transportation and infrastructure, having a comprehensive sidewalk program, promoting strategic community development, encouraging airport expansion and business retention, which online somebody noted that wasn't in here, and it's totally in here with specific action steps to work on our runway, work on charter air carriers, maintain and expand current lease agreements, vibrant downtown, encouraging continued enhancement and diversity of the downtown area, expand opportunities for efficient and quality service delivery, so just working on basic services, promoting quality and diversification of housing. So pardon my long-winded little point of information here. There's a lot of really great things in here, so it's interesting when just one small thing is pointed out, but that is the way of the world, and I think that we should get moving forward on this particular document at this particular time. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Councilor Wallace.
A few brief comments. I wanted to echo, I think, what Mark or Barry mentioned about how this strategic plan actually does reflect the voter mandate, if I can call it that, that this current council received. We didn't come to the strategic planning session and create all of these ideas out of thin air. A lot of us met with constituents, repeatedly and asked them their concerns and what would you like to see changed, and many of their ideas made it into this strategic plan. And so I think that it's something we can all stand behind. There are some potentially tricky steps to take as we go forward, but everybody's on board with trying to make Morgantown a better place, and this plan outlines some key ways that we can do that. Regarding to Councilor Wendell's point about some of the comments about sales tax, I think a lot of those comments are based on a lack of information and sometimes misinformation, specifically regarding the B&O and sales tax. People are concerned that that's going to just double up and cost businesses so much that they'll be forced to flee outside city limits. It's very clearly noted in state law that any implementation of a sales tax by a municipal entity must come with a reduction in B&O tax. So it's not that we're just trying to grab all the money we can get and dig into people's pockets and things like that. And in fact, in conversations with bar owners and business owners, many of the people who will be most directly affected, i.e. them, are more in favor of a sales tax than they are of a B&O tax. A B&O tax is sort of an antiquated creature. Here in West Virginia, we are one of 2 or 3 states that still rely on B&O taxes for a large part of our municipal revenue. A sales tax is something that most people are familiar with. It's easy. It's a penny on the dollar in the case of a municipal 1% tax. It's not a scary thing. It's something you're accustomed to, and any outside businesses that are wanting to move to Morgantown don't have to learn the ropes of B&O tax. They simply start collecting and remitting sales tax. So I think that's a potential win-win for businesses as well. And finally, I think that this is a good example of local government reacting to local issues. This is a local issue. B&O tax, businesses having to pay that quarterly. Maybe they do want a 1% sales tax instead. Let's look into that. It's not something that we've done yet, but as with other tricky issues, I think it's important to at least be willing to have the conversation and see what comes out of it.
Any other?
Sure. I'll have a go at it. I just want to say I'm so excited and pleased to see so much hard work come together, and I would like to note that it certainly does reflect, I think, sort of an overall perspective that we were able to work on, but that I also want to point out that everyone didn't get everything they wanted. This was the result of a winnowing process and trying to come up with priorities that we can work on, whether we're in our individual commissions and boards that we happen to serve on, that our fellow citizens serve on, or that our employees serve on. There is something for us all to do, and I'm very enthusiastic about that. I also wanted to note that in part, this document not only reflects, some of, I think, individual council members' commitment to some of the values that are exhibited. So attainable housing, for example, is one of the most important issues that's been set before me as a person and as a council member. But I think when we see so much of this proposal is the result of contributions from employees, from administrative staff. There are requests from staff and administrators about for ways that we can help them do their jobs by making policy that reflects their values and where they want to see their programs headed. And I think that's really important. And then I also wanted to note that I think this is part of that we are part of a national trend of municipalities responding to local issues and state issues and federal issues in innovative ways to try to address the challenges that we face with the resources that we have. And I also, finally, I wanted to address this money grab issue, which I keep hearing over and over again. And I just would like to note that it's my experience that there's not an intent to perform some kind of money grab. But should we get a dollar, that we will do more with that dollar, and we will do better with that dollar than any level of government that we are surrounded by or included in. And I think that I'm privileged to be a part of this group, and I'm excited about all of this work we have to do.
Additional comments? But let me just, one, if you indulge me a moment. I think this is very ambitious, but I'm pleased to see it. And I think you're absolutely correct. This is what the community told us, each of us, and collectively we shared and we brought to the table and gave to our administration, and our administration responded in a very appropriate manner. Ambitious. It is ambitious. And I want to re-echo what our deputy mayor said. These issues get easier with community support. If you believe they are worthwhile, we need to hear that you agree and you're willing to support it. We can't do this alone. Our administration can't do this alone. We can't fight all these battles by ourselves. If you really think they're worthwhile, you need to tell us and you need to get behind them. Other than that, can we call the roll?
Rachel Fetty?
Yes.
Ryan Wallace?
Yes.
Jenny Celine?
Yes.
Ron Delaney?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Brusitis?
Yes.
Barry Wendell?
Yes.
And Mayor Kawecki.
Yes, and that passes 7-0. All right, we're finished with new business. We move on to the city manager's report.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I have 4 action items, then I have one additional one verbally I'd like to go over with you. The first one is a follow-up from last week's Committee of the Whole meeting, the request from the Convention and Visitors Bureau, a contribution that's not currently budgeted, but we do have funds available for $1,000 for the Goodwill Ambassador Program.
So you'll need a motion on that?
Yes, please.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Well, we did have a very enthusiastic correspondence from Barb Howe in favor of this measure.
And she's currently serving on that commission.
Yes.
And has served on it since the beginning of it. And they thought it would just be 1 year and then 2 years. And I think that we definitely at one point had we were not always putting our best face forward to teams who are incoming. And so to have a group that's specifically working on that helps us as a city and helps the university at the same time. And it's, I think, really important as we came into the Big 12 that we put on a new face, and we did. So this is pretty key.
And I think we have proof that it has been effective. So it's easy.
Lots of letters.
It's easy to support something that works.
Mm-hmm.
Any additional discussion? None? Call for the question.
Rachel Fetty?
Yes.
Brian Wallace?
Yes.
Jenny Celine?
Yes.
Ron Delaney?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Brusitis?
Yes.
Barry Wendell?
Yes.
And Mayor Kawecki.
Yes, and that passes 7-0.
The next item is a supplemental agreement with the West Virginia Department of Highways pertaining to the Deckers Creek pedestrian bridge. If you recall, because of the time lag that there were some funds expended, then additionally there was cost increases. So we went back to the state and asked for $90,000 additionally, and they approved that. So quite simply, this is just approving an agreement saying that we agree to them giving us additional money.
So what do you think?
Move to approve.
Well, this is truly an example of our city government working hard, conserving our city dollars by going back for the second ask. That takes effort and time, and is not assured. And so y'all must have done a nice job of putting that together, and we all should be quite appreciative.
And we are. Did we have a second on that? Second.
Do we need to have a motion, or do we need to have a vote to accept this? Which seems
By
Says
consensus?
action is recommended to authorize.
Right, and that's a recommendation. I mean, technically, I can go ahead and
I think
sign
you
the
can take
agreement.
it.
But I wanted to bring it to you, one, as a follow-up, but I think it just affirms our commitment to the
Well,
project.
Let's celebrate our success with a vote here.
Yeah.
all right.
Rachel
Thanks.
Petty,
Yes.
Ryan Wallace,
Yes.
Jenny Celine.
Yes.
Ron Delaney.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Brusitis.
Yes.
Barry Wendell.
Yes.
And Mayor Kowecki.
Yes.
Who's been working on it the most?
Next is the Public Works request to purchase a new street sweeper. And there's information that's included in there. This is a program we've purchased, maybe not under this council, but at least the tenure that I've been here, other equipment through this National Joint Powers Alliance. So basically what this group is being a much larger purchasing agent and really leverage the best possible pricing out there. So this is, obviously this is a very expensive piece of equipment, but have received the very best price. So it's approving the specifications pertaining to the regenerative air sweeper in the amount of $254,376. So
Motion?
Approve.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Discussion.
I didn't notice, maybe I missed it, warranty and so forth, and I was actually surprised at the price. It
It's
makes sense, but
expensive.
I'm thinking comparable to a Zamboni, but actually more expensive, which was one of the concerns with the ice rink in 2 sheets. If you move that second sheet elsewhere, you would really need the one Zamboni to serve both of them, because it's so expensive to buy an additional one. But I'm assuming it's all protected, that if something goes awry in the next X number of years, that it's covered under insurance or so forth.
Warranty or something.
under the warranty. You know what? I couldn't tell the exact specifics. It's a good question. I can seek that out, and oftentimes we do have redundancies in our systems. So this is not a purchase that we make very often, and there's the potential of, to my knowledge, I don't believe that we're going to be immediately disposing of the old sweeper. So if there's something where it does need to go in for servicing, because during the warmer months, it's utilized daily over an extensive period of time. So there's a schedule to cover the 100+ miles, and then some to utilize this. So if it's out of service, then it puts us that much further behind. But getting back to your question, it's a good one. Honestly, I don't know. I can investigate that and find out, and I could shoot y'all just a short email pertaining to that. So.
Rachel?
I would just like to note the quote's only good till December 20th, so we should probably put some hustle in our bustle.
Oh, yeah, I'm suggesting you purchase this right now, but Deputy Mayor Brusitis he's asking more of kind of a general inquiry, not meaning to hold up the purchase.
No,
so, but it's a good question on, particularly on bigger pieces of equipment where we're spending a lot of money on it. And so generally for the Public Works Department, dump trucks and things like that, these are big pieces of equipment that we keep for a long, long period of time. But if there's some sort of manufacturing backing up over a period of time, most of us in the automobile industry would be, 3 years, 36,000 miles. I'm sure it works differently. It's probably based on the number of hours, not miles,
Okay.
On this piece of equipment. So,
Councilor Celine?
So I have two questions. I think it's a wonderful purchase. One of the items that people have requested over time is having where possible, having a publicized schedule of where this machinery is going, so that people could potentially remove their vehicles from the street, or just know, sometimes they're coming in the wee hours and somebody sleeps hard and they don't know that it's been through. You would think that maybe someone would, because they would see that the street was clean, which is really exciting in my neighborhood. But if we had, where possible, some recognition of where it's been and where it's going, just especially where we bought something new and exciting, it would be neat to highlight that a bit where we could, so that people would know when it's coming potentially, and whether or not that's possible, where it's been, just so that people, some people will say, well, they never come to my neighborhood. Well, I imagine that they might come, or they might come and there's so many cars there that they couldn't sweep, between the cars because, people were parking there. So anyway, whatever we could do, especially using our public information person to publicize where it's going and where it's been, I think that's neat.
Yeah, I think generally we could announce by neighborhood, but
Yes.
it wouldn't be
Not
like
the streets, not by
right,
streets.
like a GPS sort of tracker.
No,
that you go on.
No, just in general.
Where is the
Just
sweeper?
in general. Because I know some places, particularly in Saberton, where the streets are really narrow and cars are parked pretty densely, they had mentioned before that they didn't feel as though it had been through the neighborhood, or if it was, it hadn't been effective because the cars were in the way. So just whatever we could do to show off our new equipment.
Sure.
And then the area between Advance Auto and the Coliseum, apparently the Division of Highways doesn't operate a street sweeper, or theirs was broken, but whenever we can keep the potential bicycle climbing lane clear of gravel by using this equipment, even just when we're going between neighborhoods.
It'd be nice to get the lights back on, too.
Yeah.
Yes, it would be nice to get the lights back on too.
Okay,
Maybe we
all
need
right,
new
making a lot of
poles,
notes
because
here.
it's been
All right.
so long since we've had any lights there. But yeah, and
Okay.
actually going up and going down both on the just to sweep the shoulders, because I don't think the Division of Highways, and I know that the city has done that before.
Oh, okay, all right.
Might be something you have to talk to with them, but
Councilor Wallace.
Pass.
You pass?
And we joke about having a camera attached to it to follow it around town, but think about that pregnant giraffe where people were looking at that thing waiting for the birth for months at a time. And maybe there are advertising opportunities, the side of the sweeper, we could have little stickers for local
Oh, right along like the
businesses.
Zamboni.
That's right.
Yeah.
You can wave to the
Right, exactly.
Tie that into our white space.
sweeper cam,
Initiative.
Right,
Sweeper cam.
Sweeper cam. I like it.
just one day of that. We don't need a whole bunch of those.
By all means.
My question's about, this is an expensive piece of equipment. Was this a planned purchase? Was it included
Yes.
in the budget for
Yes,
this
it
fiscal
is.
year?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I was surprised to hear that we have the old one still operating. Did we, for people who don't know, that used to have a very high-pitched whine going through the neighborhood that drove everybody crazy.
I guess part of the point that I was making about redundancies in the systems, so, it could be that, we're planning to surplus that. So I don't know, that's a good question. And so
okay.
I only meant in those extreme examples where, the question came up of, if it needed to be serviced and kind of having the continuity of service. So,
Having a backup.
Okay.
okay.
Councilor Petty.
Now you brought up a comment. I would rather have clean streets and the wine than have it surplused and then not have clean streets. But that's just me.
Double the miles.
We'll get them running both north and south.
It would also provide notice to people who were waiting to have their streets cleaned.
Very good. No other? Then call for the question, or by consensus? Call for the question.
Rachel Fetty,
Yes.
Ryan Wallace,
Yes.
Jenny Celine.
Yes.
Ron Delaney.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Brusitis.
Yes.
Barry Wendell.
Yes.
Mayor Quacky.
Yes, and that passes 7-0.
The next is the approval of the settlement claim, civil action 17C 65 So staff is recommending that you're authorizing the city manager to finalize the settlement agreement language and to authorize the expenditure of the $8,825.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? This is, for lack of a better term, the most efficient way to handle this circumstance and the least costly. So, call for the question.
Rachel Fetty,
Yes.
Ryan Wallace,
Yes.
Jenny Celine,
Yes.
Ron Delaney,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Brusitis.
Yes.
Barry Wendell.
Yes.
And Mayor Kowacki.
Yes, and that passes 7-0.
Okay. Last but not least, I wanted to talk about the runway extension effort that's being undertaken at the airport. If you remember back in September, I did a PowerPoint presentation on the TV screen and talked about the improvements that are being made at the airport. Of course, that we're in the process of pursuing the justification study before the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, to construct the additional runway length. We have received very favorable feedback, but there is further clarification that the FAA has asked for. There's been a group of us through this RED committee, so it's the Runway Extension Development, which consists of representative from the MCDA, the Mon County Development Authority, and also the Monongalia County Commission. And so each of these representatives, myself, have been working very diligently. We've met directly with the contact person, Mr. Matt DeJulian, and conducted this dialogue about the runway extension. So what I'm leading to is asking for your authorization or support for a letter of support on this runway extension. I don't think there's been any official action since the legislative session of this body. This certainly has been supported continuously. But there are other letters. In fact, at the Mon County Commission, they're going to be considering a letter tomorrow morning at their meeting. And Commissioner Sean Secor has been very instrumental, and I guess a shout out to him on all of his diligence and work with the various stakeholders and bringing together information helpful to this endeavor and strong support of the city in that effort. So, but again, that's asking for a motion for a letter of support for the runway extension project. So,
The letter of support from whom?
From us.
Yes, from this body, and I will write it on your behalf.
Okay.
I'd like to move that we write a letter of support for the runway extension and ask that the city manager write it on our behalf.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Councilor Petty.
I have a question about why a letter of support would be needed at this point.
The document itself has been before the FAA over a period of time. Quite frankly, some information has gotten stale. And so we needed to go back and to update. There's technical information pertaining to the current use of the airport on users that come to the airport and the instances where the users could not come to the airport because of weather-related reasons. So when the weather's adverse, it creates, in essence, where the runway is much shorter in length than what it actually is, in essence. So there is new information. There's a new letter that's coming, for instance, from University President Gordon Gee. We had an old letter, I want to say it was maybe a couple years, or it could be older than that. I don't have the file in front of me. But so this would be a current letter and with the date of this month, and would be consistent with the other letters that are being collected, not only from Mon County, but the other municipalities, from my understanding, is asked to write a letter of support as well. So,
Okay. Thank you.
Further discussion? Comments? None? Call for the question.
Rachel Petty,
Yes.
Ryan Wallace,
Yes.
Jenny Celine,
Yes.
Ron Delaney,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Brusitis.
Yes.
Barry Wendell.
Yes.
Mayor Queckie.
Yes, and that passes 7-0.
Mayor, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Well, very good.
Pardon, can I ask for a point of clarification on this?
Please.
In line with what Counselor Fetty was asking, the document that you're working on is called,
It's a justification study.
yeah,
So
so it's,
there's
yeah.
three parts of this. The justification study will kick off and is done in tandem, and these other studies have been completed, which is called a benefit cost analysis, the BCA, and an environmental assessment. So the justification study is done by the local FAA representative. The BCA and the EA, those go to a regional entity within the FAA. But the most significant part is to receive approval from the justification. And that will precipitate not a public hearing, but there will be out of lack of a better term, kind of like a charrette. You know, the Metropolitan Planning Organization does that, where they have an open period of time, and there's boards that are set up as displays, and so we will have an open public comment period for 1 month once we receive approval for the justification study. So it all occurs within a short amount of time.
So this justification study, these letters are part of the justification study,
Correct.
which is the
And
most
so
important part.
Yes, it is. So once we receive approval on that, then the other two components are reviewed concurrently. And again, the justification study, that is the most critical step at this juncture.
Good question, Counselor Fetty.
Additional comments? None? Call for the question.
We did, didn't
We did.
Oh, we did?
We did that, yeah.
We're on it.
We voted, and then I just was having a point of clarification.
Remember she said
Oh, I'm sorry, I
Just
was
to-
lost in something else.
Just to mess you up.
point of
Thank you.
clarification.
Concluded my report. So.
On it like a
You did.
bonnet.
Very good. I was busy taking notes here. Report from City Clerk.
Yes, I just wanted to mention in reference to the West Virginia Municipal League Midwinter, the rooms are going fast, and so try to get with me, if not this week, beginning of next week, to make your reservations.
Could you explain this meeting, because we have quite a few new members.
Yes, the West Virginia Municipal League has 2 meetings in the year, the midwinter and the summer conference, the one that we did this past August. And during the midwinter, you get to meet the legislatures and discuss any issues that you would like to have addressed for you. That's what we do.
So do we sign up for this, and then do we have to pay for the hotel rooms? Or
No,
we don't
everything
have
is.
to pay for anything? We just have to get with you and fill out the papers. Okay, good.
Like today or tomorrow.
Yeah, I get that.
Very
Thank
good.
you, that's all.
Report from the City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since we have so many home rule ordinances tonight, since it's relatively early, I'll note we filed our annual progress report with the Home Rule Board last Friday, December 1st. This is a report every municipality participating in the program submits each year and notes each of the initiatives that the municipality has put forth and provides some information about what they've done to implement those and their successes and lessons learned also. Morgantown has been one of the most active communities in amendments to its initial plan. All the previous filings, the annual reports as well as the plans and amendments have been collected at the West Virginia Development Office's site. The Home Rule program has moved under new leadership, but the documents are still maintained there. But if new filings are maintained somewhere else, I can also provide information about where to find those. But it's a good resource to see what other communities are doing with this program and see what Morgantown's progress is there as well. Thank you.
Very good. Report from council members. Councilor Fetty.
Well, since we had a meeting last week, I don't have much to report. It was a fine Thanksgiving, and I'm looking forward to the holidays. I do have a couple of things that I wanted to note. I was approached by a member of the downtown business community who had some concerns about our commitment to the downtown area before our plan came out. And he raised a couple of concerns related to food trucks and the spacing of food trucks along High Street. And I just indicated to him that I would raise that issue at some point so that perhaps we could discuss it. I know that they are spaced in a specific way that's designed to sort of keep traffic moving in and to keep traffic from kind of clogging up the arterials on the street. But I think he had some concerns about competition, which I don't think we have the ability to address. But I did want to raise that concern. Aside from that, we are doing pretty well in First Ward, and we are moving forward on addressing a couple of things that are of a high concern to us. But we can only say that we have a high level of appreciation for the staff at the city level, and appreciate the work that's being done by the police department and the fire marshals and the fire department. So thank you.
Very good. Councilor Wallace.
Also a fairly quiet weekend up in Wiles Hill. No major parties to break up and no major crimes to report. We do have one small fun item coming up. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's the Wiles Hill Snowflake 2K fun walk, fun run. It's in the packet. This is, I don't know, we have a great little community center up in Wiles Hill. It's an old school. It's the Bow Park Community Center on top of the hill, and my wife has kind of taken it under her wing and tried to use it as a community center. And so we're trying to have more of these fun run events and things like that. This one is to benefit the playground that needed to be replaced. And so if you can join us at 9:30 a.m., come register, get some exercise at 10, and then compensate for all that exercise with hot chocolate, cookies, and snacks afterwards. Make a donation if you can, but otherwise just come out and spend a little time on Saturday with us up in Wiles Hill. And that is all.
Very good. Councilor Saline.
There are a lot of things happening. I'm sure that the mayor has quite the list, but there have been some great choral concerts and a symphony concert at the university. MTC has a Christmas-themed play that there's still a number of showings next weekend. I have been pleased with some of the other events that have been going on, such as there was an event with the Wings program from the Chamber of Commerce that took place at the Child Advocacy Center. And so you could become familiar with the Child Advocacy Center and do networking and have a holiday event. So people are doing a nice job of taking advantage of the fact that it's a holiday season and people are feeling festive to have some great events in the area. The Evansdale Neighborhood Association is still working on their signs, so they're putting up signs throughout their neighborhood, and I think that the neighborhoods such as Wiles Hill and Woodburn that have some great signs up, I think it really helps people to understand when they're driving through an area that it is actually a neighborhood where people live. Maybe helps keep the, we can hope, keeps the speeds down and just lets people recognize that there might be children or children at bus stops and people who are walking through the area. Anyway, I just really appreciate being able to work with such a lovely council and manager and staff, and I'm glad that we're having such a nice holiday season in Morgantown. Thank you.
Councilor Delaney.
Yeah, so I have a few things. Most recently, my WVU students completed their design studies for the Morgantown History Museum and presented those yesterday to Pamela Ball there. They did a wonderful job, and it was a great collaboration between the museum and the university. This is the kind of project where the design students get to work on a project that is practice-based. There's a client and somebody that they're accountable to besides their professor, which is always very helpful for them. And it also helps the museum because it helps vet a lot of possibilities and ideas on the very front end of a project, and then providing these services pro bono. So the service learning is a win-win for both. Hopefully they will at some point be able to exhibit those presentations down there or online. Secondly, the Woodburn Neighborhood Association got together after a couple of year hiatus last Wednesday evening. The planning department reached out to them to share the plans for the Area 2 study, or Study Area 2, which is that area sort of below the Woodburn neighborhood. And I think that the plans that have been developed to that point, at least in terms of how they were presented, the neighborhood viewed favorably. I think over the course of that study, there's been a movement towards zoning a lot of that area R3. The neighborhood didn't seem, at least those present, didn't seem to express concerns about that so long as an adequate buffer was maintained between that R3 and the Woodburn neighborhood proper. So anyways, we appreciate the planning department for reaching out and opening up that dialogue with us. I want to mention one thing I heard from a constituent through the process of advertising for that event, some concerns about the intersection, the four-way intersection at Ridgewood and Charles Avenue. Specifically, she expressed concerns about safety for her children. Walking to the bus, she said that that folks stop at that four-way in the mornings very infrequently. And with the Boys and Girls Club there near that intersection and school buses, anything that the city could do to help enforce safe traffic flow at that location, I know would be very much appreciated. Finally, you know, I think I just want to express some concern about what's happening at the federal level. I know that some folks think that local councils have no business delving into national politics, but I think that many of the measures that are in the proposed House and Senate bills do very much affect us locally, and I think that it's important that folks become informed about what is in those proposals, and whatever your position is, one way or the other, this is the opportunity to speak out to your congressional representatives and your senator. And so two things for me that I just want to mention here. One is really has to do with community development and our physical environment, and the other I think has to do with sort of our social environment. I think both are infrastructure issues. And specifically, first I want to mention the historic tax credit. There's a federal historic tax credit which was initiated by Ronald Reagan in the 1980s. And since that time, 42,000 buildings, 2.5 million jobs have been created, $130 billion in private capital has been reinvested. And those things can be correlated to the historic tax credit. The calculation done by the National Park Service, who the Department of Interior basically is responsible for historic preservation in the U.S., has calculated that for every dollar of credit, $1.20 ends up going back to the Treasury. And so not only is it good for our communities because it provides incentive to maintain and preserve our character-defining buildings, but it also makes good economic sense. There's a financial return on the investment. Right now, the House has eliminated the historic tax credit, and the Senate has significantly reduced it in their House bills. So if that's something that you care about, and I do hear that quite often, why can't we do more about these buildings that we have in our downtown, then I would encourage you to reach out to your representatives in Washington and express that. I think the second point, which has to do with social infrastructure, a couple weeks ago I had the opportunity, along with the mayor and I think Councilor Wallace was in and out, to attend a hunger workshop here in town at the Church of the Brethren. And I think, you know, when we create a budget that creates $1 million to $1.5 million trillion deficit, I don't think it's any secret that at some point there are going to be cuts to make up for that deficit. And what I keep hearing is SNAP, this SNAP program. And so at this hunger workshop, there were some things that I've continued to mull over, much like the historic tax credit. Certainly you don't implement programs like SNAP in order to make money, or you don't do it for community development reasons. You do it because there are people who are hungry. There are people that are that as a result of that, they're less healthy, and they're less successful as contributing members of our society. And but nonetheless, there is a financial impact to that. And according to which study you look at, for every dollar that's invested in SNAP, there's about $1.73 or $1.80, somewhere in that range, of economic benefit to the community. And so I think these are examples where if these programs go away, there is a direct local impact. And the federal government may remove that responsibility from their plate, but they're going to put it on to ours as a result of that. And I just think that as citizens, as concerned citizens, as Morgantown residents and Morgantown area residents, I think it's really important to become engaged in what's happening at the national level. We will not be immune from it. It is not just a personal matter of what my income is and how I'm going to be affected. This will affect our entire community and our city. So I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate what you've said. Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor.
I too appreciate what you said, Councilor Delaney, and maybe I'll jump on your soapbox since you're now off your soapbox. But the phrase money grab came up earlier, and it seems to me that might describe what's happening at the national level and grabbing from some of the most vulnerable members of our community. And by our community, I mean right here in Morgantown. And vulnerable, too, in the young people who don't have a vote, and taking away that money from their futures and dimming their futures in order to put it in the pockets of people who, frankly, already have a lot of money. But thank you for articulating so well some of the deep concerns that I and others in this community have. Moving on, the WVU Sierra Student Coalition is encouraging the university to install solar panels that could power the Mountain Lair or Rec Center or comparable buildings. It has a petition to this effect that anyone in the community can sign. Perhaps some of us read the account in the newspaper. Instead of giving the web address, it's probably just easier to Google WVU Sierra Student Coalition. So not only is this clearly a cost-saving benefit, it's also a symbol, and one that WVU really should consider, and we've done some work here as a community. That is, when you put a solar panel on a building that's visible, you're telling young people in particular, we care about your future. We really do. We care about the environment. We care about looking after you and looking ahead for you. And so I'm very much in favor of this petition. I want to reference what our candidate and now officially reappointed member of the Planning Commission, Tim Stranko, said in our conversation today when I asked him what 3 things he would like to see in Morgantown in the next 10 years. He answered green space, green space, green space. He mentioned the fact that our community is going to see a significant population growth in that time. Something like 40,000 people over the next 10, 20 years are going to be pouring into our area. And one of the ways of creating and preserving a community that's going to sustain that kind of population growth, as he mentioned, is green space. And he mentioned a desirability of a green belt, which we've heard a lot about. I've spoken about that, and others have spoken about that. And he said he would also like to see the city move toward purchasing some of that green space as a way of preserving that future viability for our community. So again, the phrase money grab that's going to be circulated in social media is false. It's an investment in the sustainability and prosperity of our community. A dollar spent here could gain us $10 very easily in the near future. People thinking about holiday donations, we hear buy local. Well, maybe donate local too. There's some great organizations locally that I'm sure could benefit from contributions, financial contributions from our community, such as the Boys and Girls Club, the North Central West Virginia Girls Basketball League. Go North Panthers. We won this weekend. That was fabulous. The Appalachian Prison Book Project, other local groups that are doing great work could certainly use your help this holiday season. Finally, 4:15 this Sunday, Winter Ice Spectacular at our rink. The WVU Figure Skating Club, the Mason-Dixon Figure Skating Club will be performing. I'll do a little bit of announcing, but it's a great opportunity to see local talent. It's $5 for adults, $3 for children. It benefits the WVU Figure Skating Club and their efforts to do some traveling and performing out of state in the spring. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it.
Very good. Councilor Wendell.
So I have a few things I want to talk about. I won't take too long. Well, maybe I will. So first, I attended a panel discussion on the opioid crisis sponsored by Congressman McKinley last night at University High. The congressman was not there. His representative, who would not answer any policy questions, said McKinley was voting on the tax bill in Washington. What I learned from the panel is that the crisis is much worse than most of us can imagine, and that funding for both treatment and law enforcement is desperately needed. Congressman McKinley voted many times to repeal the Affordable Care Act, including expanded Medicaid. The panelists said that 80 to 90% of their funding for addiction treatment comes from Medicaid. There's something to call Congressman McKinley about. Next thing, Councilor Wallace gave an excellent interview this morning on WAJR about the Health and Wellness Commission. Kudos to him. Also, I signed up for a breakfast meeting with the Chamber of Commerce and our state legislators tomorrow morning. I don't always agree with the Chamber's priorities, but they asked for one thing to discuss with the legislators. I picked funding for K-12 and higher education in the state. Some of our legislators apparently don't think this is important. I will ask about changes to home rule after hearing the rumors from Councilman Brazaitis. So that's a concern. December 1st was World AIDS Day. I remember a lot of friends of mine who died from AIDS. I'm still wearing my red ribbon. And one thing I haven't said here, although it's on an old blog of mine, is that Los Angeles had become kind of a cemetery for me, which made it a little bit easier for me to leave at the time that I did. Related to that, the United States Supreme Court heard arguments today in a case pitting civil rights, particularly for LGBT people, against so-called religious freedom. I heard about religious freedom arguments growing up in Maryland in the 1950s and 60s used to keep African Americans from public accommodations and from moving into white residential neighborhoods. I hope the court goes with the civil rights issue. The religious freedom argument has always been bogus. The Urban Landscape Commission meets tomorrow afternoon, a week early because they didn't want to meet the week after, and the Bicycle Board Thursday. I plan to attend both of those meetings. There's a video by a guy named Logic, who I had never heard of, but he was nominated for a Grammy for Best Video. And the name of the video is it's a phone number, which I didn't write down, but it's a phone number of the Suicide Prevention Hotline. And the video is beautiful about a young gay man who wants to kill himself and calls the number and ends up having a good life afterwards. And I would recommend watching that video, and also if you know anybody who's having a hard time, particularly in the holidays, I would hope you would give them that phone number. The holiday of Hanukkah begins next week, Tuesday night. Hanukkah means dedication, as I said in the invocation, and we Jews celebrate the fight for freedom against oppression. I'm working on fighting against oppression. That's all.
Thank you very much. And thank you for a nice, very good invocation, too.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. I have a few things. I guess the United Fund reached out to the various neighborhood associations asking them if they would be willing to participate in the collection of food for the holiday distribution, and the South Park Association of Neighbors said that they would do that. And if you're in the second ward, first ward, Greenmont, thereabouts, because I posted on your Facebook page, we are collecting non-perishables, and you can bring them to 220 Grand Street this week till Friday, and we will take them to the Armory on Saturday for inclusion in the holiday giveaway. I want to apologize to you about not making that presentation. That was something I wanted to do, and checked my calendar, and it wasn't on my calendar. And I do apologize.
Well, hopefully
for that.
there'll be more opportunities to see the work.
Well, I was thinking too that might be a good thing for council to view. Is there a possibility that this could be brought to the meeting of the whole?
Sure.
I mean,
The students will not be here, but I know that would probably be the best way to present it. But what I've recommended or suggested to the museum is that perhaps they could place them on their website, the entries. They're all digitally formatted, so.
Are they printed out in any manner that
Well,
they
they
could
do.
be-
They left prints with the museum as well. So yes, their format's 20 by 30 inches printed. We can figure out how to.
Yeah.
It would be, I'm sorry, go on.
Just as a clarification, we do not have a committee of the whole in December anyways, so even if you were thinking
Have them
of.
come back in January.
Yeah, in
perhaps.
January, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure they would be amenable to that. We can work out the details.
I'd
That'd be good.
very much like to see their work, and I appreciate the fact that you took it on and did it.
Okay.
So, and
It was our pleasure. Thank you.
thank you to your students too. In line of that, I guess it's the capstone people at WVU have a presentation tomorrow on the survey of the arts over at the new building over at Evansdale.
Evansdale Crossing.
In the media center,
Mhm.
which I think is the 4th floor, if I remember correctly.
It's one at the top. It's either the third or the fourth floor.
Yeah. So in any case, that happens between 5:30 tomorrow and 7 o'clock, and it's open to the public. So if you're interested in learning about what they think,
5:30.
their take on the arts in Morgantown, that would be an appropriate activity.
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow
Evansdale
night.
Crossing.
Yeah, that's on my calendar. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Very good. And I have some things to read. The Art of Flower Arranging, that's Saturday, December 9th. That's at the Botanic Garden at 1 p.m. We have another at Nighttime Raptors, Howling. That's Saturday, December 9th, at the Botanic Gardens also. This one is very interesting, a wonderful winter concert. That's December 10th, and that's at the Morgantown Readiness Center, and that will be the Army Band. Sounds very interesting. We have holiday food and toy distribution. I just talked about that. We're collecting for it. But that will occur on Monday, December 11th, and that's at the Readiness Center also. A Christmas Carol, and that's at the WVU Clay Theater, which is the larger theater. And I think lastly, the Benefit in Touch and Concern, that's at the old Stonehouse Gift Shop, and I think that's Monday, December 18th, and Saturday, December 30th, from 11 to 3. And I believe any sales there, a portion of it or all of it, goes to Benefit in Touch and Concern. Do we have a motion for?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Thank you. We're adjourned.